I live about half an hour south of Birmingham, which is a big city in the centre of England, the United Kingdom. Birmingham has had a rich artistic heritage. In terms of music, that place is the birth of heavy metal. It's produced bands like ELO, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin. Who else has come from there? The Moody Blues, UB40, Duran Duran. There's so many bands I can't think of. ELO, a whole host of bands. Judas Priest. Very important musical area. You know, we had a two-tone come out of this, heavy metal came out of this, you know, certain progressive rock elements came out of this, Led Zeppelin came out of this place, you know, Christine McVie from Fleetwood Mac, you know, came from this area. There's a whole host. I'm sat right in the middle of this sort of incredible, rich heritage. But up in Birmingham, you've also got the Birmingham Royal Ballet, you've got the CBSO, you've got various art galleries, theatres, very rich place. I'm very glad that I was born, you know, in the middle of this. You know, if I'd have been an up-and-coming drummer living in the middle of Australia or New Zealand, where would I have gone? But just half an hour up the road, I could go and see the biggest bands in the world, and I could see that people from the area I came from had ended up going into the biggest bands that have ever existed. It was very inspiring to me. Now, I saw a news report come out saying that basically Birmingham Council are bankrupt. The incompetence. Anyway, they're bankrupt, and so what are they going to do? They're going to pull the money for the arts funding. So every single group is losing its arts funding. CBSO, Birmingham Royal Ballet, various theatres, various arts organisations. The funding's all going. Oh, we got no money. What shall we cut? We will cut the arts. And you know why they'll do that? Because the general public will grudgingly accept it. All right. Now, if they cut another area, that would impact in jobs, wouldn't it? It would impact in people's livelihoods. But of course, if you're an artist, it doesn't really matter, does it, if you lose your job? It doesn't really matter if you've got nowhere to work. It doesn't really matter if we have no art, does it? It just doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You know, why don't they care? Because they don't value it. They don't value art, right? They don't understand that people are working in that area. But what are they working at? Making paintings, doing music? Now, I want to really hit this head on in this video. That attitude and where it comes from and how stupid it is, right? Now, there's another thing here that's very interesting. AI is here, right? I'm seeing it all the time. I'm using it all the time. You know, I'm seeing so much artwork now being produced. AI art, AI music, AI text. Now, it's started to make me to think that, you know, is there a difference between art and entertainment? Now, if I pull this book up here that I happen to have down here, I was just having a look at it this morning, this one here. Frank Zappa, the real Frank Zappa, written by Frank Zappa. In this book, he professed that there was no difference between art and entertainment, that it was all entertainment, right? Now, I don't agree. As much as I love him, I do not agree, and I'm going to try and explain why I think that is. Entertainment is quite a wide term. It's something that fills up your day. You know, it's like, and it's the reason why we stay alive. Basically, you know, we've got to keep going. We've got to eat. We've got to earn some money. You know, we've got to put some food on the table, keep a roof over our heads. And then there's these moments where we get some time to ourselves. We can then do something we want to do. We might want to go for a walk, you know, and have a look at the, you know, the birds in the trees, you know, or we might want to go down and have a go on the slides, you know, go up and down the slide, or we might want to go out for a meal, right? All these are entertainment. They entertain us. It's very, very important. Without that, there is no worth to life. It's the thing that we all live for, is entertainment. Now, entertainment is something that diverts us. And so the 20th century could be seen as entertainment slowly being harnessed at the the beck and call of the commercial capitalist world. Now, I'm not an anti-capitalist, right? I'm so glad I live in a capitalist country because I know that capitalism, and that fundamentally means that I get to keep the money I earn, basically. That's what capitalism, you get to keep the capital. The problem with that is if you've got a huge company like Amazon, you get to keep that capital, right? That's a sacrifice we have to pay so I can keep that capital. I'll tell you one thing I don't want. I don't want some socialist totalitarian autocrat telling me what I've got to do with my money, because money, what it does is it buys you time. There's nothing else it buys you. You think it buys you a nice jacket or an AC/DC t-shirt, which I've got on here. I'll show you this there. That's what I was referring to, and I realised you couldn't see it. I know it buys you that, but really, why do I want to buy this? So I can wear it in a time that I've allotted for me, right? It buys you your freedom. Freedom is so important, right? Freedom, we were all born free, and yet everywhere man is in chains. I didn't make that one up, I'm afraid. And it's true, you know, for vast amounts of time and in vast amounts of places, most human beings either lived under a totalitarian control where most of their life was what they looked at, what they read, where they went, what they said, what they did, was controlled. And they may have been able to get out into the countryside every now and then. But I think if you're living in North Korea right now, and you're walking through some fields, starving hungry, after just seeing someone, executed in your village for saying the wrong thing, looking at some nice trees and some birds might not have the same effect. It doesn't have the same effect. You need to have that freedom. You need to have that leisure time. That's what entertainment is. That's what entertainment does. Okay? The reasons why we, on the whole, in the West, have got loads of time to be able to enjoy ourselves and indulge ourselves, with a nice cup of tea and a nice biscuit, and be able to put our nice vinyl record on, sit down, it's because we bought ourselves at that time. And that comes from industrialisation. So people don't have to go out and work for like 20 hours a day to get things done. We've got machines that will do that. And it's come out of capitalism, right? Now, I think if I earn some money, I'm quite happy to share some of that wealth with the underprivileged. That's great. And I think, how do you keep that under control? By living in a democracy, and when they're spending in the wrong place, we vote for them. This is all basic political stuff, right? And it has a relevance when it comes to the arts, because art can entertain, right? Like cookery, food can entertain. Food's there to keep you alive, to sustain you, right? But in that, it can entertain you as well in all sorts of different ways. The same's true with art. Art is there to sustain us, right? You'll go, no, it isn't, Andy. It's just something in the background that just makes my life a little bit better. No. Right, let's go back to that idea of freedom. Let's go back to that idea that you have been able to carve out your time, and that is money. When they say time is money, that is right. Money buys you time, and it buys you experiences. And experiences, positive experiences that you're in control of, and you can choose what you want, are the things that make life worthwhile. You take that away from someone, and their life is no longer worthwhile. You need the freedom. Now, freedom comes from the idea of being able to think what you want, right? And that means having an opinion about something. Now, us having an opinion and thinking has to be checked, and it's checked by two incredible things that human beings have invented. One is science. Now, what science does is it checks the truth. We are free to think whatever we want to think, right? There's a door over here. I'll just show you. You never see the door. There's a door there, right? I'm never going to tell you what's behind that door. You don't know what's in that door. One day, I will go into that door and show you. It's an incredible thing that's in that. You know what's behind that door? You'll be amazed when you go in there and see it. But I'm not going to let you go in there. Now that there is basically the description of human existence, isn't it? Out there is a great big door. What's behind it? We don't know. Is there a God? Isn't there a God? Is there an afterlife? Is there not an afterlife? Does the universe go on forever? Is there life on other planets, right? We don't know. We are entitled to have any opinion about that in any shape or form. We can think whatever we want, but we need to check it. Right, so what's behind my door? You have a think what's there. Now what you're doing is logically thinking, right? Now some of you might be thinking, I think there's a goblin on a Harley Davidson motorcycle and he's ready to drive off into the sunset with his fingers like that, and Andy has borrowed his jacket for this because you're probably wondering why I'm sat there looking like a heavy metal fan from 1982, but I am, and that's the way it is. And you don't know why that is. Why is that? Use your brain, logically think it through. Now, whatever you think's going on there, you are using logic, you're using your rational thinking to see what's in there. But the only way we can really know is to open that door and see what's actually in there, right? That empirical view of the world, which we are trying to make as objective as possible, and using our rational, logical thought to try and predict what could be there, because anybody who thought it was the goblin on the Harley Davidson, that's ridiculous. Anyone's thinking, well, it's either a cupboard or maybe there's another room there. What would be in the other room? Well, he's always said he's in his garage, so it could just probably be a storeroom. So there's probably some old boxes with old wires in there and a few books, That's what I would guess he's got in there. And you could well be right, but you don't know, do you? Because I ain't going to let you go in and have a look. So, where are we with this? Science checks truth. Human beings should be allowed to think whatever they want, but science has to come in and check it, and we have to respect truth. Respecting truth is a great thing. By respecting truth, we will be able to buy the time to have our freedom. It's essential that we respect truth to achieve that. Right, because if we don't respect truth, right, then you can say whatever you want. And if you can say whatever you want, then any reality can be reality. And once you move away from reality, things start to go seriously wrong. And when things start to go seriously wrong, that precarious, order that sits upon, a bed of chaos starts to collapse, and you will descend into it. And once you descend into it, you will not be able to sit and listen to your Black Sabbath records on the night whilst having a nice cup of tea and eating a biscuit. You won't be able to do that. You'll be fighting to survive the enveloping chaos that will eventually grab you and pull you down to oblivion. Right? That's how important truth is. Try and spot when people are fooling you when it comes to the truth, because again, that is what totalitarian systems do. They sell you something and they try and sell you something that's not true. Always watch out for that. If anyone's saying something and they're talking about my truth or their truth, watch it. Because once they demolish truth, you will fall into the pit of chaos, right? But there's another part of this, because it's not all about truth, is it? What about morals? What about rights and wrong? What about, good and bad? What about guilty and innocent? What about all these decisions that we have to make, about how good things are? How do we measure how good things are? Surely that's subjective, isn't it? If you think something's good and I think something's good, if we disagree, then that doesn't matter, does it? Well, no, but, one thing I don't like is murder. I'm not a big fan of murder. I don't think it's very good. Oh, but murder's absolutely wrong, Andy, isn't it? Why? Why is murder wrong? Well, because of God. God says it's wrong. Well, that's your opinion. Can we check it with the truth? Well, we can't actually, but I've got, I think it could be true, yeah. But you're not going to try and force me into believing that's true, are you? Well, I can't really, because then we would be living in a totalitarian society. And there's been so many societies which are, when run under a religion, become totalitarian. So, I was going to go off in an area, and this is the thing, I'm so aware that me, at 56 years old, I have to watch what I say on this channel. It's not swearing, it's not talking about sexual stuff, it's none of those taboos, it's a whole set of new taboos that we put in. I have to watch what I'm saying. Right? At the moment, here in the UK, some conservative politician has, dared to, cast aspersions against Islam. Now, my granddad was a Muslim, right? But I find it very difficult to equate that as racism. He's been getting accused of being Islamophobic, and conservative politicians, they are questioning them, saying, was what he said Islamophobic? And they won't say it. Everyone's scared to even go there, right? He's getting accused of being a racist. The term Islamophobia was invented in the totalitarian state of Iran. And it was created to make that religion absolute. So anybody who said anything against it was being phobic, right? It's about control, right? Islam could well be true. It could well be the absolute way the world works, right? The idea that we need to annihilate Jews off the planet, which so only some, remember I've got, Muslim people in my family, or did have, I'm aware of what it means. I know they never thought that, but there are a few people out there. Now, where have they got that idea? Because they've interpreted the words of Muhammad in a certain way. I'm getting scared saying this. This video might not go out now I've said all this, but it's exactly the same with Christianity. Thank God we don't follow the Bible, word for word, because we'd be stoning gay people to death, wouldn't we? So, oh, this is going to be a controversial one, isn't it? I should be allowed to come out and say this. I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. You are welcome to question me. You don't have to get angry. You can say, I don't think you're right there, Andy, because of this. This is the whole point. And when it comes to morals and ethics, right, that is a different realm to truth, right? It basically comes down to an opinion of what we think's right or wrong. And right or wrong is whether we think something is good or not good. And good is related to how beautiful we think something is. Now that's the philosophical leap. And beauty is negotiated in the realm of the arts, right? You need to be able to appreciate the beautiful. And what art does is an individual, in the same way as they can say, I think rationally this is the case, and then science goes and checks it. What art does is an artist will go, I think this is aesthetically beautiful. Or not beautiful. They can say, I think this is an ugly thing. There's so many books being written that have tried to illustrate the horrors of slavery or the Holocaust, stories that try and let you know how truly ugly that was. Right? Art does that. It's the negotiation like science. You have an opinion about what's beautiful, and you should be free to think anything's beautiful or not beautiful. Anything. And artists have explored that, and so many people get upset with the artists. Those artists that put a pile of bricks in an art gallery, or get a crucifix and put it inside a bottle of their own urine, or cut themselves out. Everybody, what's happening there is these artists are going, basically, I think this is beautiful. And you go, is it? Is it really beautiful? And 20th century, with all the negotiations that have been going on in the 28th century, and the influence of sort of postmodernist ideas and existentialist ideas and phenomenological ideas, all those ideas have informed the arts in the 20th century, and they have really been questioning the categories of beauty, which should happen. Right? I'm not a fan of those philosophies, but I believe they should happen. And actually, even I have got a lot of worth from those philosophies. And this video is very influenced because I had a training in art. I originally was a painter. And if you notice, my music videos here, where I talk about music, are slightly different to anybody else's, because there is a postmodernist sort of Brechtian approach to these videos, right? I'm very aware of the nature and limits of the talking head into camera video here, and I mess with it all the time. And that has been very useful for me. I'm now talking to you about something that's got nothing really to do with music. I will bring it back to music, and it's very important, because what we're talking about may well kill music off completely. If we do not appreciate beauty, if we lose that, now you can say that's not going to happen. It happens. Right? Countries could fall into totalitarianism, or countries could just fall into disaster. This is a luxury. Science and art is a luxury that we have. right? If you drop anybody into a state of survival, right? If this order that we live in, that you comfortably live in, that people don't seem to have any respect for anymore, that they feel like they can kick it and bash it, right? Because it doesn't matter. They feel like they can criticize it. Utopian thinking. Utopian thinking. Now, utopia is an idea that comes from a book, right? Was written by Thomas Cromwell. I don't know. Some bloke around about the Henry VIII theory. And utopia, this idea of this perfect place. Philosophers of this is an area of philosophy. Utopia, right? Starts off with the Republic by Plato. You know, this idea of what would a perfect place be like. That's the aesthetic thing. It's a feat of the imagination. Right, dystopians, exactly the same thing. Wouldn't it be terrible if we ended up in this place? The artists are trying to negotiate this. But utopian thinking is awful. Absolutely awful. If it drives you to bite the hand that feeds you, literally. Right, bite the hand that keeps you alive. You know, this situation, if you are living in a free country and you are free to watch this video and I'm free to say what I want to say and you're free to be able to listen to that and make up your own mind, and you might be shouting at me going, you're totally wrong, Andy, you are totally wrong, and you are welcome to do that. And you know something, I might be wrong. I allow myself to talk and I make mistakes. I say stuff that is not true. All the time I make a mistake. This is not a book. This is a YouTube. It's ongoing. There's 600 videos here. I come in and talk about music. I say things which I think are true, and then it gets verified by the audience. And if you go down the comments, the very wonderful people who watch this channel go, yeah, that's right, but you're wrong about that, Andy. That person didn't invent that, or that wasn't made at that time. And sometimes I make, you know, mistakes. I did a Live Aid video the other day. And Live Aid was Live Aid happened in 1985, and this is 2024. And I said 27 years ago that was just a mistake. So those of you who got upset by this, it was 39 years ago, right? 2024. If you take away the number and you go back, that's 39 years. I just came up with the wrong number, and the reason is because subconsciously I am still living around about, now I've got to do math all of it, so it's 1985, 1995, 2005, 2012, of course, just after my kids were born, right? Once my kids were born, any sort of real appreciation of time passing has gone. And that's what you got, was an old guy that got lost track and just guessed at a number. And everyone got really upset about that, and and I was wrong. I was wrong. Do I sit there feeling guilty that I was wrong? No, I don't. Because I see it's all part of the process, the wonderful process we're in, right? The arts negotiate what is good and bad. It's a very, very complex system that does it. It's not an easy thing. There are channels, you know. If you think you want to be a pop star or rock star, what's the story? You know, the Star is Born story. What is that story? Is you go out there, right? You have this sort of inner beauty. You know, this is the thing, like Cinderella, that's not been discovered yet. It needs to be discovered. You put yourself out there and you get the chance. You suddenly get the chance. This is what talent shows up. When you step up, you open your mouth and start singing, and the world goes, oh my God, we all think this is beautiful. And you're vindicated because your idea of what was beautiful is what the world's idea was beautiful. And when people get up on, you know, these talent shows and they can't sing, and we all have a laugh about them, we're not laughing because they can't sing. We're laughing because we are rejecting, because obviously a laugh, that's a growl. That's a modified growl. That's like that's you know, anything in our pack in the old days, you know, when we didn't have any technology, anything we didn't like, any diseased person or someone we would growl them out the group. Get out! And that is what the laugh is. It's the hyena laugh. And we laugh because we want to cast that person out who's got such a bad idea of what is beautiful. God, they really think they could sing. It's the fact that they thought they could sing. Right, this is what art does. And on a talent show, that's the very specific way that it works. The record deal's another thing. The art gallery is another thing. The best-selling book, the film. All of these things are different methods for people to go, I think this is cool. I think this is bad. I think this is really good. I think this is beautiful. I think this is exciting. I think this is sad. I think this is mournful. I think this is pretty. All these things, these ideas that get put out there all the time. And then we check it, and then the culture, this is what culture is. Culture then whips them up. And some of these things only last for a short time. They're short time important because at that point the culture needs it just for that few months. You know, these hit records that last for 5 minutes and everyone's going around, you know, going, I got bills, I got to pay. Yeah, I've got bills I've got to pay. There's a lot of bills, you know. There's that very shallow thing where we're all brought together by that. But certain pieces of art last, which is what I call objective art. I got this idea from Gurdjieff. The idea of objective art can work on that superficial level, but also has a deep truth. The Bible is an example of objective art, and yes, I think it's a work of art. All right, I think it's a work of art. I believe if there is a God, that the process that God has created to determine our morals is us. That's how we determine the morals. For those of you who don't believe in God, then straight down the line, we determine our morals. And the way we determine our morals is by deciding what's good and bad. I've said it a million times. So, this is massively important. This is what the arts does, all right? Now, within art is the idea of esoteric art. So, entertainment will always survive, and art can be entertaining. So if you sit down and watch Star Wars, you could enjoy it because of all the action, the stories and the characters, and then you can get into the deeper story, the story of fear, and how fear corrupts Darth Vader, how his want to protect his family, a feeling that we all have, makes him go towards a totalitarian place where he believes he can, you know, control life and death itself, and that ends up with him turning to the dark side. In fact, the very subject matter that I'm worried about and trying to get across on this video, you can see that esoteric aspect. You know, you can sit down and watch one of the biggest films of all time, E.T., and you can love the wonderful little E.T. and he does that. Or you can step back and go, oh my God, this is a modern interpretation of the New Testament where E.T. is Jesus Christ. And he descends down from the heavens, he performs a set of miracles, he then dies, he's reborn, and he returns up to heaven. And those of you who've never spotted that go, oh God, I never thought about that. Yeah, that's the esoteric part. Those stories, you know, the story of the New Testament and the story of E.T. And then if you look at the story of, say, Harry Potter, he dies and is born again. These are archetypal stories. They're very, very important. And it's what maintains us as human beings. It's where we negotiate our morals. Now, esoteric ideas are often very hard to introduce into mainstream culture. You need some sort of mechanism. Now, it could be CBGB's in New York in the late 70s. It could be that. It could have been San Francisco for about 3 weeks in 1967. It could be that. You know, there are certain moments. It could be Stravinsky writing The Rites of Spring for Diaghilev, for that ballet, and people going in and watching that at a certain point in time, an audience seeing that, where the culture is moving from a sort of Victorian culture to a sort of modernist culture. The First World War is about to happen. The great technological creation of the Titanic is about to sink. And at that moment in time, Stravinsky comes and he takes you back, right back to almost like ritualistic, our roots, and we're suddenly confronted with the sort of chaos that's there, right? And Picasso has done the same thing with Demoiselle d'Avignon. Same thing, as we've returned to these ancient cultural ideas. Suddenly this has been put into the mainstream, and it's harsh and it's abrasive. A few years later we have jazz, and then we've got the blues. It's all the same idea. That was key to the modernist era, right? The allowance of things to come through is very, very important. Now, I know a ton of artists that are working in the arts. I know a ton of kids that are creative and they want to come up into that. So, if you are a kid now and you want to study art or music, if you are well off and privileged, it will be no problem. But if you are poor and underprivileged, it will be a massive problem. If we cut the funding to certain arts organisations, to arts groups, to the CBSO, to the Royal Ballet, because these become structures in which people can access creativity. I really believe that it's very important for people to have access to creativity. I really believe that a lot of the mental health issues, a lot of the frustrations come from the fact that people are not trained in how to be creative. We will have in every single town a place where you can go and play football or do weightlifting or swim, a leisure centre, that's the name for it. You will have a leisure centre, wonderful places, and there will be clubs. This little town will be full of everything where you can do sports, because competition is great, because capitalism is based upon competition, when we need to be able to teach people how to be competitive and learn how to lose and learn how to win. Really important thing. And also be healthy and run around and keep yourself fit. That's all really important, right? And nobody will ever pull that. It will never be pulled out for the school curriculum, and they'll never close down those legislators. It'll be up in arms. What about all the fat people? What are they going to do? They need to be able to get fit and all this sort of stuff. That will all come up. Everyone will challenge it. But with the arts, they don't see it like that. But where do the creative people go? What do they do? What they do is they sit in their house with mental health issues, right? Reacting to the world around them. And what is their world around them? They're underprivileged. They're at the bottom of the pile, right? They're seeing the problems, but upstairs no one's seeing it because there's no art coming from that, right? When we had rock music was a great turn to the underprivileged. Suddenly, rock music was turning around and thinking, what do these itinerant blues musicians, what did they think back in the 1930s? At the same time, we had things like in England, we've had a rich history of playwriting and plays, Shakespeare and Dickens and all that literary, Suddenly we have the theatre of the angry young man. You get think plays like Look Back in Anger and Room at the Top, and that starts to influence film. And what we get is we suddenly get a picture into the working classes, what it's like. Ken Loach makes Kathy Come Home, and suddenly we're seeing it in. Now, is this entertainment? If you watch Kathy Come Home, is that entertainment? Well, it is. You sit down and it feels that time that you've carved out, right? But it's also a window into something very important. You can see how the stuff I just mentioned is really influencing our moral structure, and things change in the 60s, and the civil rights movement comes out of these changes. It's rooted back in the arts. It really is. It's rooted in the people that are not in that situation being able to have some empathy for those who are. It's the ability to be able to appreciate someone else's humanity, and you don't appreciate someone else's humanity except through art. When we read Anne Frank's diary, right, this is a great work of literature. Because as much as we could be told about the 6 million people who died in the Holocaust, Jews that died, and gay people that died, the mentally ill that were executed, all that horror, it's just numbers. Then you pick up Anne Frank and you suddenly get this idea of this young teenage girl on the cusp of her life with all the excitement and intrigues that you have at that age, all that stuff, but having to keep herself, right, to have no life. The only life she has is looking out the window and seeing the birds flying off. The birds are free, but she's not. And we know as we read this view that she will in a few weeks be carted off to a concentration camp and die of horrendous illness in there. Whatever she had, typhoid or whatever it was, I don't know. This is what art does. The arts are really, really important. And if we live in a society where we believe in funding the wellness, the well-beingness of us, we need to fund the arts. We need to put money into education. We need to put money into local groups. People who are underprivileged in terms of music, let's get back to music, should be able to access, music education. I teach drums. I charge a lot of money per hour. The only kids that can come to me for drum lessons are kids whose parents can afford well over 100, 150 quid a month if they come in every week. It's bonkers. Colleges are pulling their funding, and for this to happen in Birmingham, to have all these organisations under a threat, the very structure in which the schools and the colleges and the local people, how people are going to be able to see ballet? How are they going to be able to see art or plays? How are they going to be able to see it? Suddenly they're back in North Korea, and if you don't understand that. Now, one of the things I want to say, and I really feel strongly about this, and it's really difficult to talk about this, those ideas I've been talking about, all the ideas about inclusion and underprivilegedness and all that thing that we talk about, and how important the arts are for that, and what an incredible thing it was in the 1960s when that happened, is out of that, there seems to be two camps have emerged. There are those that believe that everyone should be treated the same, that we should get rid of all the divides and we should peer deep into the humanity of every single person. But there's also been this idea of tribes emerging out of that and then supporting the tribes, right? That the tribe has a certain amount of rights, and then creating a hierarchy of tribes and saying this is at the bottom and this is at the top. And the only way you can beat the ones at the top is by fighting them and doing the same thing to them. It's that revolutionary idea, right, that comes from Marxism, that the thing needs to revolve, there needs to be a revolution, the thing needs to be upturned, right? And the thing is that that's all well and good, and I actually think you need a little bit of that. You do need to sometimes kick down the walls and say, this isn't right, we're not having this anymore. But once you link it to identity, what happens is people who are privileged that happen to be in one of the arbitrary identity groups that you believe is underprivileged can now state their underprivilegedness, right? And they can use that to maintain their privilege, right? We should be championing the arts, whatever. But the funding won't go to that now. The funding will go to privileged people that happen to belong to a certain identity group, and then the powers that be can sit that back happily knowing that no one will question what they're doing, because they'll point and go, well, we're funding that identity group. Think about it. Really think about it. A lot of these ideas got promoted by somebody making a comment about the fact Beyonce has done a country music track, Texas Hold'em, which I quite like. It's quite a good song, actually. And saying, she's got a right. She has a right to make this because she's a black woman, and country music is fundamentally a black music. And I'm like, no music's a black music. No music's a white music. No music's any colour. Right? It's made by individual people. It doesn't belong to a race. Right, I'm not going to swallow this intersectional Marxist garbage, right, that somehow that you fight racism with more racism, right? No way. I'm not going to say classical music's white music, and black people can play it, but you've got to remember they should respect the form that was created by white people, the gift that's been given by white people to the world. It's an ugly, horrible thing, and I don't want to say it. The thing that came about to me, I thought, why are they saying this about Beyonce? She's a billionaire, right? She's a billionaire. Why is she a billionaire? Because she lives in a Western democracy, and she was able to go into that democracy, right, that has as much mobility for different groups of any society. It's not perfect, but it's not North Korea, and it's not Soviet, Russia. It's not China. It's not Venezuela, right? It's not apartheid South Africa. It's none of those things, She has been able, in the culture that she lives in, the society, to move to the top and turn herself into a billionaire. I don't feel sorry for her at all, right? And she's welcome in my book to play country music, because anybody can play country music, because country music is American music. As is the blues, is American music, and America is the product of integration. What about slavery, Andrew? What about slavery? They got all that awful slavery. Slavery is the black stain on the United States of America. It's the thing that points out how hypocritical those people were to have the Bill of Rights, to have the American Constitution that embedded these ideas of freedom, and then not to apply it to black people because they thought they were a slave class. And why did they believe that? Because they believed they were less than human. And why did they believe that? Because they decided to make them some other arbitrary group. and not welcome them into the one race that we have, which is the race of human beings, right? And so that awful thing was overturned, and it was overturned by Western culture. The Enlightenment made us realize, because of science, because of truth, that we're actually all human beings. And our morals, which really do come from Christianity, this idea that everybody is loved by God and everybody has a certain set of rights. You put those two things together and it becomes quite apparent that slavery based upon race is completely wrong. Now, of course, slavery is going on now, right now, all over the world. Racism is going on all over the world. Groups are being persecuted all over the world, right? The war that we have going on between Israel and Palestine, Hamas, that is a war of identity. I'm afraid we need to get rid of it, okay? And the way we can get rid of this, I promise you, and I've tried to explain it logically here, and I still feel it's really hard to explain and get to the truth of this, but it is rooted in the freedom of speech and freedom of expression. The freedom to be able to say you think something is true, but it needs to be verified by science, and we have to have a faith in science. We have to have a respect for the truth that comes from science, and it's also negotiated through the arts, and the arts is how we negotiate whether something is right or wrong. And if you want to protest about something, make a piece of art about it, okay? I have no problem with that, no problem at all, right? But don't create an ideology out of these things, because ideologies are unchecked truth statements and unchecked quality statements. That's what an ideology is. And if you accept that wholeheartedly, it's a dogmatic ideology. And if you're supporting a dogmatic ideology, you will believe it's absolutely true. And once you believe it's absolutely true, you will believe that you are morally right 100%. And once you believe you're morally right 100%, you will believe that you are justified in your revolutionary anger to then now shout and scream at the other person that doesn't agree with you, because they are wrong. And that semblance of humanity in you to go, maybe I'm wrong, has gone. That anger is evidence that that has gone. That frustration you have with this evil person has gone. Right? The arts are where this is negotiated. If we allow this funding and worse than that, this disrespect of how important art is. If it's always a thing we're going to cut, it's always a thing we're going to put aside, if we're always going to mistrust someone who wants to be an artist, who wants to have a career as an artist, and say, why should they have that? Why should they have that luxury? Why should they? If all those ideas that are in there, when a relative of yours turns around and says, I really want to be, a pop star, or I want to be a musician, I want to play guitar, play drums, and you go, well, that's wonderful, I'll support you with that, but I think you need a backup. A backup, really. So can you, if you could go to college and learn a bit about accountancy, you need to have a backup, because you're probably not going to succeed, are you? Because you're not very good, are you, really? I have no faith in you, really. Even though I'm paying lip service, even though I'm trying to support you, and it looks like I'm supporting you because I'm taking you for your lessons as a parent talking to their kid, but really need a backup. When someone says that you need a backup, what they're saying is, I have no faith in you to be able to do this. And you will believe it. We are all being brainwashed by the culture around us to not be able to stand on our 2 feet, breathe the air in and go, I am me and what I do is okay. We are undone by perfectionism. We are undone by self-consciousness, undone by this moral idea that we might be doing something wrong or saying something wrong. And then people there to say, you shouldn't say that. And that person is a racist because they said that. And that person is homophobic because they said that. And we are there ready to say, that person is a something phobe. Every single time they're not, they're people. They're people. And their opinions can change. And if we live in a world where we accept that people's opinions can change, and the way you change people's opinions is through art. Art is made out of love. That's what art is made out of. And great art is made out. It's a big chunk of love, and it reaches across the world, and it puts its arms out, and it pulls everybody in. Right? This is some airy-fairy hippie thing I'm saying. It's actually how art works. right? And those who want to call jazz black music, and those who want to champion the rights of gay people, you know, and create a separate space for these people, or invade that, or everything that's out on the internet at the moment, you know, all that thing that you're inundated, that battle, which is only there because it makes you look, right? It's a car crash, it's an argument, it's a shouting match. You know, it's like I have to come on here and I have to make my list, and I go through my 10 albums, and you will see me lampoon the fact that I will make out. Of course, it's not objective. It's a list. You've got to understand. It's a negotiation. It's always a negotiation. I'm saying my list, and then you check your list. It's not quite the same, but there's a point where we meet in the middle, and that is what art does. This is what I'm doing here on this channel. This is what art does. You know, art's really important, but talking about art is really important as well. It's really, really important. There's an entertainment and there's an esoteric artistic thrill that you get from hearing somebody talk about art. It's the second best thing. That's what I do on here. I talk about art. I talk about music. Right, and I talk about music to a certain person that grew up in the 1970s and 1980s and had a certain aesthetic idea of what music is, and that's changing now. And this is what I want to make this video about. I believe the threats to art are pretty serious. But before, people were always required, they always needed art. For years I said, we'll always need music. People are always going to want to have music. They're always going to want to listen to music. They're always going to want to read a book and look at nice pictures on the wall. That will never go away. And it won't. But do we need human beings making that stuff anymore? Right? Well, you do if you want that underprivileged person to tell you what it's like in their life. And for you to empathise with it and go, this is really not right, something's got to be done, that person's got to be helped. Right? That is basically morals. That is the thing. And people do this all day long as well. Nobody gets rewarded for it. You know, that's what life is about. Above entertainment, actually, my original premise, that above that thing of, you know, being able to appreciate art, the most important thing you can do with your free time is help other people. It's so rewarding to do that. Oh, I'm such a thoroughly good person today. I'm virtue signaling my, you know, I'm doing a very clever thing here, and I'm giving a good old kick to this sort of political correctness. Why don't I like political correctness? Because I'm an artist and I want to be free. Now here, wouldn't it be wonderful if I then blurted out a bunch of words? Not fuck, not shit, not piss, not any of those words, right? Because you will let those go. There might be a few old people that are upset that Andy actually said that on a video. But there's a certain word that I cannot say on this video. It really could get me like cancelled. There's a number of words I can't say. There's a number of things I can't say. There's a number of statements of facts which would be pushing the envelope of what's acceptable. We are falling into a totalitarian state. Why? Because the people who run the world always want to maintain their position, and they will always justify the fact that they are there because there's a God-given right to be there. That's why kings always thought that they had their ascendancy to that position was God-given. And in certain people's cases, like Caligula, they actually ended up believing that they were gods. That is what will happen. That's why people like Trump, you know, or Rupert Murdoch, or anybody who thinks they rule the world, will always employ their children in that job. They will always bring them up, and they want them to take over, you know, to be the next Caesar. And that needs to be maintained. And identity politics gives people the perfect thing to virtue signal how they're helping people. This is what the big organisations are doing. They virtue signal that while they actually put a big foot on the head of anybody who's actually at the bottom of the pile and squeeze it down. And you know what links us all together, those who are at the bottom of the pile? You're linked together by the fact that you're all at the bottom of the pile. Right? If we do not value the arts, I promise you, you could go, yeah, but Andy, you know, there's more important things than the arts. No, there really isn't. Once you lose that freedom, you know, what do totalitarian states do? They get control of the art. That's why if you look at Nazi art, or you look at Soviet art, it's awful. It's not art. It's just propaganda. Keep your eye out for propaganda, because it's not art. And it hides in certain places at the moment. I hope you enjoyed this video. I don't know what it's going to be called. I saw the fact that the Birmingham Council was pulling funding from all those arts group, and then, you know, sat there open mouths as everybody in this area just doesn't give a toss. It will just happen. No one will care. The government will push that through. Then they will close down degrees for art subjects. You'll only be able to do that if you can pay for them. Then they'll shut down any semblance of art education in the schools. And all the creative people who need to do that will be forced into trying to study STEM subjects because they want the whole world to come out and become like technologists or engineers. And it's not going to happen because the world's full of all sorts of different people. It's awful. And we once lived in the world, as much as it was faulty, and you could criticise it, but we once lived in a world where you could do that. You could, you know, I'm here because 20, 30 years ago, I was able to leave school and eke out a living doing art because rents were cheaper and bills were cheaper. You didn't need that much. In a Western democracy, liberal democracy, you could eke out that little position and you could operate as an artist. Can't now. So without it being funding, how are we going to get art? Well, what we will do is we'll get the art of the super hyper privileged. And next time you're looking at the new pop star that's just emerged, ask yourself, where do they come from? And you will find that behind them is enough of a privileged place for them to be able to do what they're doing. Think about it. We need to fund the arts. So, if you want to fund the arts, you can do that by becoming a Patreon over on my Patreon. The link's down below. Pay me a little bit of money every month and that will help me out. I can come here and spat this nonsense at you. And if you want to support me the other way, you can go over to my YouTube PayPal tip jar. It's down there, and that will be a wonderful thing. If you do that, you can support the arts like that. This is how we're going to go. This is the model we're going to have to go to, you see. And the art world hasn't caught up. You know, I worked this out 2 years ago, which is why I'm here now, you know, doing a YouTube video. I understand that the arts has to come across in a different way. The reason why I do this channel is because I want to be able to promote the arts on it. Once I've got that following, I can promote the arts. I've started off with my music to start off with my art, but that doesn't matter. You know, I'll try. You know, I want to support other arts. You know, anyway. If you don't want to support me financially, then at least put a like on the video, and then you can ring the notification bell. And I am done. I look very rock today, don't I? Very rock. Oh, done. I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.